All right, so first thing, we have our soil sample here that we got from our project's borrow pit. And with this sample, we're gonna be doing our standard Proctor test, Atterberg limits, grain size, and moisture content to make sure that this soil sample meets our project specifications. All right, so now we're gonna prep the soil sample. I'm gonna have to dump it in this pan and air dry it. So I'm gonna do that now. Now before we air dry it, I think I'd go ahead and get my moisture sample out. All right, so now that we have our sample in the pan, we're gonna go ahead and air dry it for at least 24 hours. All right, so now that our soil sample's dry, we're getting ready to do the standard Proctor test. So next, we're gonna run this soil sample through a number 4 sieve to get enough material for a 4-inch mold here. Now we're gonna hit this with a hammer to make sure most of it goes through the sieve. All right, so now we've processed all of the material through the sieves, and now we're gonna take this out and get ready to start our Proctor test. All right, so now we have to measure this, get 8 pounds for our standard Proctor test, and we're gonna be using that bowl and scale right over there. So. All right, so now we have our 8 pounds of our soil sample. We're gonna add it into this pan right here, and we're gonna start adding water to run different tests to find our optimum moisture content and maximum dry density. So now we're gonna add some water to this sample, and we're gonna start by adding 200 milliliters. All right, so now we've got our soil sample to the moisture content that we wanted to start the Proctor test. And now we're gonna add soil to this mold in 3 equal layers and evenly compact each of those 3 layers. So we've got our first layer in the mold, and we're gonna start compacting the sample with a 10-pound hammer. We're gonna do 25 blows per layer. All right, so now we've got our soil sample compacted to 3 layers, 25 blows each. Now we're gonna move it up here, and we're gonna scrape off the top layer. All right, so now that we've got this smoothed off and ready to go, we're gonna weigh the soil sample and the mold together. We know the weight of the mold's around 9 pounds or so. So we're gonna weigh this together, subtract the weight of the mold, and we're gonna get the weight of our soil and record it on our Proctor test sheet. So now we're gonna extract the soil from the mold. All right, so now we've got our soil sample extracted from the mold, and we're gonna cut out the middle section that we're gonna use for our moisture content test. All right, so now we've got our sample from our mold. We've weighed it, and now we're going to put it in the oven overnight at 270 degrees Fahrenheit to get the weight of the dry soil. All right, so that completes the first point of our standard proctor test. We normally do 5 points, so we're going to do 4 more points, compaction tests, adding about 2% more moisture each test. So this is our soil sample that we're going to throw in the oven for the natural moisture content. This is straight from the field, and we're going to throw it in the oven overnight. All right, so now we're going to do our sieve analysis test. And we have our soil sample here, and we're going to run it through these different size sieves all the way down from 4 to 200. As you can see, the different sizes that will filter the material. And basically we're doing this to find out whether the soil is more of a clay makeup or a sand, so we can figure out the gradation of the soil and classify it that way. So we're going to pour our soil sample into this sieve and let it run through. All right, so now we're going to put the top on, and we're going to move this into the sifter. The sifter is going to shake and rotate and allow the soil to run through each one of the sieves. So now that we've sifted the sample, what we're going to do is take a look at each one of these sieves and see how much material has been retained on each of them, and then we're going to weigh each one of the sieves and get the weight of the material retained on each. And you can kind of see, like that was retained there, so that amount of soil, a little bit more on that one. Then we're going to weigh each of these. All right, so we've got some air-dried material. We ran it through the 40 sieve, and this is to prep for the Atterberg limits test. All right, so the next test we're gonna be doing is the Atterberg limits, and we have our soil from the number 40 sieve that I talked about earlier, added water to get the soil into a plastic state, and then now we're ready to do our plastic limits test. All right, so now we're gonna take a little piece like this and we're gonna roll it out into an 1/8 inch diameter strand of soil, basically. And then we're gonna do that as many times as it takes until once you roll it out, it breaks apart. Once it breaks apart, we measure that moisture content, and that moisture content, that is our plastic limit of the soil. All right, so now this little sample won't roll out into an 1/8 inch anymore. So that means we're at its plastic limit, and I'm gonna add it to this right here with the other sample. We're gonna put the lid on so it doesn't lose any more moisture. All right, so now we're gonna weigh this sample, and then we're gonna put it in the oven. All right, so now we're gonna do our liquid limit test, and we've added some more water to our sample to get it more in a liquid state. We add it to the liquid limit device, spread it out. You don't want any air bubbles at the bottom of this pan. And then we take this tool, and swift motion, you run it this way and make a canal in between, or right down the middle. All right, so after we've dropped it, it needed to be between 20 and 30 drops. This one was 27 for the canal to close, so that means we're good. And then you take your tool, take a scoop out the middle, put it in your sample like this, and then weigh it and put it in the oven just like we did for the plastic. All right, so now it's the next day. We've allowed our samples to dry overnight. So now we're gonna take them out and weigh each one of them to find out the moisture contents of all of our samples. right, so now we have our dry samples that we've taken out of the oven, and we're going to record the weight of, we have our Atterberg limits, our proctor test, and our natural moisture content test, and we're going to record all of our data on our laboratory test sheets. We're going to fill out the calculations and ultimately have our test results.